Hello again. I haven't done a video in a few months, and the whole point of starting to do videos was that I would do videos on a somewhat regular basis. So I've decided to try the basis of the videos to being a recap of mostly what I've read over the previous month. So they'll be at the end of a month or at the beginning of the next month, and then whatever else I want to talk about in addition to that, including things that I wrote about for my blog that are not books. Um, and there's at least no, there are two things that I wrote about for my blog that are not books that I'll talk about, and then on the topic of books as well, I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to reading in the next month. And not that I'm a news source or that I do breaking news, but some news did just break that is somewhat relevant to um, what I. Hold on, I have to look and see it when I do the videos. I try to disable my computer going to sleep and going into um, screensaver mode because I want to be able to see myself on the screen so that I can see what you're going to see and judge it in advance so that yeah. And by the way, if my hair, speaking of what you're seeing, if my hair occasionally moves, that's because it's an oscillating fan that is occasionally blowing directly at me, and also this book cover back here is moving a little bit. You'll see what the book is because of the fan, because it's very hot. So anyway, to the books of this past month, and I'm not quite done. Well, I'll start with book that is this month, last month, next month, and a little bit of September, which is obviously this book that I'm holding up now, which is very thick. I'm that much through it. After, I don't want to hold it up. I'm going to rest it on the thing so you can see enough of it to know what it is. After Les Mis, which is about 1,500 pages, I wanted to read Don Quixote, which is approximately 900 pages, and I like the system of reading the really, really long books a little bit at a time. This one I'm reading 10 pages at a time. Les Mis, I started reading 5 at a time, then I read 10 and 15 and ultimately 20 at a time, and this book I cannot progress in that manner with the screen still getting dark, so I'll figure out what I did wrong with that another time, perhaps. But yes, I don't know what I can do. So I'll just, whenever it gets dark, you'll see my hand go up like this, move the trackpad. But anyway, I can't get into this like I got into Les Mis. It's not the same sort of book. I don't have the exact stats on it because I haven't written about it yet, but it's, I believe, older and of a different sort. And I think that I've read now about 200 pages that have nothing to do with Don Quixote himself, the character, or Sancho Panza, or very little to do. And so, but I will persevere, and this is my quest, at least one of them, and at least for now. But yeah, I'm going to do another month of reading 10 pages a day, and then come September, wherever I am, I'm going to sprint to the end, because unless it gets really, really good, I'm not savoring it the way that I did with Les Mis. So that is that. And then this, and then when I do the recaps, I'll do a lot of books, but for the recaps I'll only do the highlights. And this is not a highlight because I particularly like it. I like it well enough, since the only book I'll probably ever read with the author's name on it, I'll show the author's name. I bought it around the time that I was in college because of the teddy bear on the cover. The teddy bear being interrogated. And that's what it's about. It's about a teddy bear accused of being a terrorist and essentially being the Unabomber. And I've, for the most part, since I started getting rid of books because I had too many, this was pretty safe because it's the only novel by this author. It's about a bear. I love bears. I have somewhat of a collection of teddy bears, very small collection, and it's not going to get too much bigger over the course of the rest of my life because teddy bears are not small, and I don't know how much room I'll have to put them, but uh, it's interesting. I haven't finished it, so I haven't written about it, so I don't have my thoughts exactly organized, but ultimately I'm not going to keep it, despite the teddy bear, because it's just not my thing. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, and I like absurd and ridiculous, but it's absurd and ridiculous in ways that don't quite mesh with me. Um, the uh, the magic that brings the bear to life isn't exactly in my wheelhouse, and but the writing's great. It's a clever idea, and look for my blog post, which will unfortunately not be able to be in the information section below the video for this video, but it will probably have a name that plays on the lyrics of the Teddy Bear Picnic song. These are the two of the four plays that I read this month: August Wilson's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Edward Albee's The Goat or Who is Sylvia. I've read this one before. I have not read this one before, but this is the play that kind of got my attention on August Wilson, even though it's not the first August Wilson play that I was aware of. It's the first August Wilson play that I was aware of Whoopi Goldberg being in on Broadway. And so that kind of, I've wanted to read it for a long time since that production, and I finally got around to it. And I loved it. And very interesting look at Chicago jazz scene, what happens or what happened, I guess, back when this takes place in 1927 in recording studio with the studio musicians, and then the star comes in and what the star demands, and also, of course, it being August Wilson. It's part of his Pittsburgh cycle, but it takes place in Chicago, which is interesting. But it's one of my favorite plays by August Wilson, and I haven't read them all, but I really liked it. I'd like to be in it. There are a couple of white characters. I think I don't know exactly, but I think 3 or 4 total white characters in all of August Wilson. So if I'm ever going to be in an August Wilson play, it'll probably be this one, and I would love to play either of these characters. And then this, one of the first plays to win, as it says down at the bottom there, the Tony Award for Best Play that I was aware of. I don't know why I bought it, when I bought it. Probably it filled out an Amazon order that needed a couple more dollars to be over $25, and then I wouldn't have to pay shipping and handling, but I didn't remember much of it except for the very beginning of it kind of inspired my first attempt to write a play, and I remembered what happened at the end of it. And but I reread it a couple days ago, and I really, really loved it. And I have not been liking the Edward Albee plays very much that I've been reading lately, so apparently I just missed seeing it at the local theater college program that I often see plays at, which apparently wanted to do this play, but didn't get to. I'd love to see this play one day. Denzel Washington is turning it into a movie on Netflix, and hopefully I'll see both of these plays. I probably will. Plays happen. And then this month was also defined by Dashiell Hammett plays. These are 2 plays, books, novels. These are 2 Dashiell Hammett novels. These are the 2 that I liked. I read 3 of them. I didn't like Red Harvest, but this is the reason that I picked up Dashiell Hammett, The Maltese Falcon. It's a famous title, a famous movie. One day I'll see it, but it's the reason. And I liked it okay, but this one I loved. This one was a lot of fun. Thin Man, it's harder to see the title with that backdrop there. It was more interesting, more amusing, less what I expected it to be. This one was what I expected all 3 books to be. This one was more amusing, but still what I expected the books to be. And I don't have much more to say about them other than I recommend this one over this one, even though this one's the famous one. I haven't seen the movie, but probably the movies. You see the movie of this one or read the book. If you're going to see the movie or read the book, you see the movie, but do both. These are very quick reads. The one I didn't like was a quick read. I appreciate when novels are quick reads. And but this one, if you want to check out the quintessential, which way am I looking? The title's right there on the side, so I can see it. But it's like looking in a mirror with the camera, except it's a reverse mirror. This looks like it's on my left side from what I'm seeing on the screen, but it's in my right hand. So this one, if you want to just dabble in the noir mystery novel, The Thin Man, I think, is the one to start with. Then read The Maltese Falcon. And there are 2 other novels that Dashiell Hammett wrote that I will probably investigate if I can, if I find them, for 50 cents a book. Then maybe some short stories. Ultimately, I got off to a bad start with Red Harvest, but ultimately I'm very curious about what else he's written, and ultimately I like his style. And so now I'm not going to show the books that are coming up, but I got a separate piece up there which I started seeking out. I read it in high school, but I started seeking it out as a kind of inspiration for a Harry Potter fanfic for the relationship of the 2 characters, Dumbledore and Grindelwald by name. Androcles and the Lion by George Bernard Shaw. I've become a bit of Shaw. I'm not that into Albie overall. I do like August Wilson, but I really love George Bernard Shaw. I didn't see that coming. Dog Sees God, which is the Peanuts gang as adults. The Art of Fiction by John Gardner, which I've been advised to read multiple times, and I'm hoping that it will inspire some of my own fiction. Also hoping that Turtles All the Way Down, John Green's most recent book, will inspire me, because so far that's been most of what I've been writing novel-wise is young adult type stuff. But one book I will show just happens to be on my list, and then today news broke that Hal Prince died. And Hal Prince, Hal Prince, of course, a giant of musical theater, and haven't read the book yet. I think there's going to be an exhibit somewhere in the city soon that I'm planning to go and write about for Onstage Blog about Hal Prince, and I think that I don't know if his musical Hal Prince, Prince of Broadway, is finally actually coming to Broadway, but obviously, big deal guy, forwards by Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim. And Hal Prince has been on my radar since the very beginning of musical theater because he directed my gateway drug into musical theater, which was The Phantom of the Opera. But he also produced Cabaret, Fiddler on the Roof, iconic shows like that. What did he do with Sweeney Todd? He directed Sweeney Todd and Evita, and so much. So again, this was already on my list. I'm not going to bump it up. I'm going to read them in the order that they were, but he was 91. It's, sad to lose him, but he had a great life, and some of it's in here. And I will read it with a different sort of feeling, even though I don't know how his death, I wouldn't necessarily have ever met him or worked with him, but just knowing that he was out there, contributing to musical theater and straight theater. So that's, sometimes there are coincidences in your choice of book or movie, and next month I was always going to read that book, which has been on my shelf for a long time. I could have read it past several years, anytime. I planned to read it next month, and I read it with that going in. So anyway, that's the book portion for now. On to a DVD portion now. I actually didn't write this particular blog post that refers to the DVDs recently, but I've had some more accents that I wanted to share. And the blog post that I refer to is not one of my best, which is maybe part of the reason why I'm redoing it in video form, but it was advocating that library book sales, now that there are very few places to rent movies anymore, you can still take them out of the library, but libraries book sales have them for often less money than they would have cost to rent at a Blockbuster or a Family Video, and you can keep them a lot longer because you can keep them indefinitely if you buy them from a library sale. So for the most part, I think of library sales as if I buy a book for a few dollars, or a DVD for a few dollars, I'm probably going to bring it back. It's a long-term loan, but sometimes I keep them. And I fairly recently had to decide, okay, I'm going to stop buying Star Wars movies after a certain point, because I had thought of Star Wars as there will be episodes 1 through 9 total, and that's all I'll have to worry about. But now there's going to be exponentially more Star Wars movies, unless they keep getting poor reactions like the last one did. But I found this. This was the first DVD I bought at my local library's sale. It is the least well-regarded Star Wars movie, probably until the one just previously. It's my favorite. It's not the best. It's not the one that I consider the best. This is the one I consider the best. I think everybody considers it the best, probably, but this one I have an affection for. And so I was very happy to find it. It has Puppet Yoda. Later DVD editions of The Phantom Menace don't have Puppet Yoda, but this one does. This one, of course, has Puppet Yoda. This cost me $3, and I thought, well, I'll take a chance. I don't know if a used DVD is going to work. It worked perfectly. Most of them do, surprisingly. This and the 2 other original Star Wars trilogy movies and an additional DVD with backstage stuff cost a total of $5 at Giovanni's room in Philadelphia. And all of the movie DVDs worked. I haven't watched the behind-the-scenes one, but that's the point, is that you can take the chance on the movies. They're cheap enough. And a lot of them work, and I'm always relieved when they work, but it's never a sure thing. I bought these 2 movies on the same day, which is ironic both because they both are C movies, but also I've been selling pitching one of my novels. It hasn't sold yet, but I've been pitching it as a cross between Jaws and The Little Mermaid. And again, I did the thing with my hands are on different sides on the screen than my brain. But they both worked. And this one, well, both. So I decided I had to restrain my DVD intake. There are certain movies I want to own, certain movies I'm willing to wait until they eventually stream. Disney movies are all going to disappear except for on the one streaming service, and I don't want to, I don't want to pay a monthly fee for a few movies, but I also don't want to encourage that kind of behavior in corporations. So I've been trying to build a Disney DVD wall to protect me from the temptation of subscribing to Disney Plus, and so far it's going very well. I got this, and then later on I got The Lion King and Bambi on DVD at the same time. Both DVDs worked. And most recently, and this wasn't on my list of movies because I'd never seen it, and so it wasn't on my list of movies, but that I felt that I had to own, falling into certain categories. But how was I supposed to not get this? Especially since the sequel appeared on Netflix. I guess it'd be one of the last Disney movies to appear on Netflix that same weekend. And again, I'd never seen it. And it's a classic, and so I had to get it. Just a couple of dollars. One of the categories of movies, of DVDs that I do want to have a certain number of are Will Smith movies. And the only 2 Will Smith movies I have owned for the past 13 years are Hancock and I Am Legend, and I like both of those movies, but they are not Will Smith's best. This is one of Will Smith's best. And this was $2, and when I got it, I've since opened it and watched it, but when I got it, it was factory sealed. So sometimes you get lucky, you get that sort of thing. I got it from the same place that I got this, which I would never have even expected to find on DVD, Michael Crawford in Barnum. It wasn't on my radar, but it was there, $2, and the DVD worked. The other 2 Will Smith movies I plan to eventually own are the first Men in Black movie and 6 Degrees of Separation. And then I have every Batman solo movie ever made except for the 1960 version. I suppose I would complete that set with that one. I've got some X-Men movies and the 3 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I can't think of very many superhero movies that I want to have on a permanent basis, but if feel like I should have some representatives of the Marvel Cinematic Universe on my shelf, and this movie was hanging out at the library for a couple of months before I actually decided to buy it. And um, and I've decided that my representative sampling of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be this, Captain America Civil War, which was the first one I saw, not the first one I saw ever, but the first one I saw. I thought, oh, these are interesting characters, I want to follow them. And Endgame, which is the one that just came out in the movies, and it's almost out on DVD, and I really liked it. And I've now seen all of the Marvel cinematic movies, except for both Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland and the first Ant-Man movie. And I prefer DC. I'll probably own Justice League eventually. I think that's the only one from the DC universe. But there's a Will Smith. Will Smith's in one of the DC movies, so maybe I'll get that one. And I haven't seen the Will Smith Aladdin. I know I want to have the Robin Williams Aladdin. Maybe the Will Smith Aladdin will be my DVD representative of the live-action remakes, even though I'm not that into the live-action remakes. What next? Okay. Intangibles. First intangible, I've been listening to the Nerd Goat podcast, which is hosted by a guy named Ron Swallow and another guy named Ed Greer. And Ed Greer is on Screen Junkies, which I love to watch. And the Nerd Goat podcast is, they have their comedian friends, mostly comedians, sometimes writers, all sorts of people, but people that they know and that they can get onto the podcast to talk about their goat, in this case, not in the sense of what goat means here, but greatest of all time. It's a mnemonic or acronym, I forget. But it stands for greatest of all time, and they have people on to talk about their nerdy greatest of all time character. So characters like Iron Man or Batman or Hermione was a recent one. They've been doing villains, so Scar and Thanos. So I really enjoy it. It's fun. They're fun guys. They have fun people on. It's other than Slate and Mark Maron, it's the first podcast that I've really taken an interest in and somewhat subscribed to. I'm not sure how subscriptions work on iTunes anymore. I download one episode of this and then all the episodes appear, but they have a little cloud figure, and if I play them, then they disappear, and I don't know if I'm subscribed or not. But and speaking of subscribing, I don't know who's watching this or why, or if you know me or not, but if you subscribe, then I guess that helps me in the YouTube world. And if you like the video, that helps me too. So like and subscribe. That's something that people say on these videos, and so I will say it. But it's very good. And I heard on the last episode that I listened to, which was the Thanos episode, they said that they're going to potentially do a call-in type function where you can leave a 2-minute message, and you can do, even if you're not, a guest on their show, you can do a 2-minute version of explaining your nerd goat. So I'm going to do that. And I've had phone messages read on podcasts that I listened to before. I asked an "Is it sexist?" question that got read and discussed on The Waves, which is one of Slate's podcasts. And so I'm going to take a chance with that. And on the off chance that you've been watching these videos from the first direct-to-camera video that I made, you can probably guess that my nerd goat would be Cassie from Animorphs. And so I'm going to organize my thoughts about her and maybe organize them into something that's like an essay that I will read into the phone when the time comes, and maybe I'll put it on my blog after it appears, if it appears or is heard on the podcast. But yeah, I just figure I'll take the chance. So Nerd Goat, and I'll link to Nerd Goat down below, and I'll link to a couple of blog posts about these. Another blog post thing that I wanted to talk about is I wrote about Facebook memories and how it started. I was annoyed by them just popping up, and then I started to get into them and my own Facebook memories, and then I started to use them as not only just to remember things from a long time ago that I might have forgotten that bring a smile to my face, but also to evaluate my online behavior of the past. And because people, and I hope to be somewhat prominent person one day and have people digging through my past. And so it's an important thing, I think, for me to look through and see what's there, what I might have said or written online that, and probably this is more something that would be a problem in stuff before Facebook, like LiveJournal and All Poetry, which are accounts that I've made disappear. But I still have the words, and I plan to look through them and see what I might have done that would be very, very problematic now. And in a sense, when I was a teenage boy, I would probably just about everything that I said or did was not good, but and so maybe I'm looking through that stuff for the few bright spots. But if I know and I can see how I've grown in certain ways, if I said something that would be considered offensive now, or if I celebrated something that turns out shouldn't have been celebrated, then I want to know that about myself. And essentially what I wrote was everybody with Facebook can do this. And if you've kept a diary, I've kept diaries. I've gone back and looked at diaries and been embarrassed to myself about what I've written in the diaries. But Facebook makes it easy. And so, and maybe Twitter eventually will do Twitter memories, and you can go back and look at that. Instagram so far is pretty easy for me because I've only got a few hundred, and they're pictures of art and things. But you never know. And so if you have the opportunity to go back and look through, let's see, with Facebook, 14 years for me of online activity, you might have some fun with it. You might learn some things about yourself. And should anybody, for whatever reason, dig up your past, you'll be a little bit more prepared if there's something that could potentially be a problem. And I think I'm going to say finally, because I think this is the last thing that I was planning to bring up. But I did my Atlas Obscura thing with Coney Island, where we knew we were going to Coney Island because we always go some Friday in summer for the free access to the aquarium, which we didn't know had been changed to Wednesdays. But so we knew we were going. I looked up places on Atlas Obscura that are in Coney Island, and I went, and it was fun. Mostly places that I'd seen just because it's stuff like the Wonder Wheel, which if I'd never been on the Wonder Wheel or any Ferris wheel, and this time we actually went on the Wonder Wheel, but you don't necessarily have to find out that the Wonder Wheel is there to know that it's there. You're walking along the boardwalk. The Wonder Wheel is visible from pretty much anywhere for a wide swath of the boardwalk and the beach. Same with the roller coasters to an extent. And it turns out that the subway station that we always used, the subway station closest to the aquarium, which the New York Aquarium is part of that subway station's name, has a design that kind of called the wave wall that is kind of inspired by its proximity to the aquarium. And so it's always cool to figure out that part of your everyday life or part of just what you use to, it's like finding out if you're a frequent Amtrak user that your particular Amtrak station is historic for whatever reason, and many of them are. I don't know if you can hear that siren. Computer's right by the window because that's the best lighting. Even when the screen goes blank, it goes dark. So, and there were a couple of cool, like there's this hidden cove that I went to that I wasn't sure I was even allowed to go anywhere near, but I found the trails that lead to it, perfectly legitimate trails, and I don't think I got any ticks. And kind of a smelly, garbagey place, and one of the big attractions of the hidden cove is an overturned rusting boat, and then elsewhere in the Coney Island Creek is an abandoned rusting submarine that was, it's not like a military submarine or an official submarine, it's just a submarine that a guy started building and then he gave up on building. And so stuff like that I look up on Atlas Obscura. But there's also, the aquarium is not on Atlas Obscura, but it's a beautiful place, and we were hoping to go and see the new shark exhibit, which I think is open. And just being on the beach, Nathan's Hot Dogs, I've never had a Nathan's Hot Dog, never ridden a Ferris wheel. Did some things on Coney Island that you gotta do on Coney Island. Been in New York almost 9 years, 10 years, somewhere in there. So that adventure and all the things that I did will be linked below, and within that blog post are links to the Atlas Obscura entries, none of which I wrote, but But, you know, there's a lot of obscure entries that I didn't write that are very interesting. Hundreds, thousands even. And then there are the ones that I did write that you should look at. So anyway, that's, I even mentioned Animorphs. I don't know if there's been one of these videos where I haven't mentioned Animorphs. So hopefully I'll do this on a monthly basis, recounting books that I have read, looking forward to the books that I'm going to read. Hopefully my biographies that I'm planning to read will not turn out to be prophetic in the way that planning to read Hal Prince next month turned out to be. But again, he was 91. Sad that he's not here, but he had a great life. And he gave us a lot. He's probably a big part of the reason that I not only got into musical theater, but stuck with it. Not because we had a personal relationship, but just because his contributions kept me going, kept me interested, as they have for so many. So this is where I would normally say ram the blade ship, which I did at the end of the first video, and because that's how Animorphs ends, it feels kind of weird to say it, to keep saying it, but I kept saying it at the end of other videos. So I don't know, maybe I've said this before in other videos that I'm not sure if it's going to continue to be my sign-off. It's not, but I don't know what my sign-off will be, especially if I manage to actually do this on a monthly basis. So I'll just say have a nice day, and keep reading, and see a Hal Prince production, a musical that he helped usher to the into the world. It probably won't be the production that he directed, unless it's Phantom of the Opera, which is still running on Broadway, which he directed. But just see some theater. Right. Have a nice day. Thank you for watching and listening, and if you like and subscribe, thank you for doing that. Bye.